college professor, occupational therapist, psychotherapist, and a talk show host with ABC. She will title her remarks Unstoppable, If You Can't Walk, Run, Turning Obstacles into Opportunities to Bounce Back Big. Come on over, Edie.
Thank you.
Welcome.
You know, if Christ can change water into wine, could he have transferred my PowerPoint onto the... It was there this morning, and I was up till 1:30 trying to figure out how to do it. I got help this morning, and it appeared. So I don't know if this was divine intervention or what. But it's good to be here. And I just put this together. It's my new keynote. I've been speaking for over 50 years. So this, in fact, it was delightful seeing some of the people that had heard me speak at Myrtle Beach and so forth. But you know what? At this point in my life, it gets really tough because I asked about Dee, the person that would always hire me. She's gone. You know, how many of you are experiencing that you don't even want to ask how someone is? It happens. So the question I have for you, and why is this not working? Because I got such good help. What happened? It was working? Where's that Avery girl?
Sir Richard is usually our tech support.
We tested it all. And so when I sent the email, I sent the PowerPoint.
You non-believer!
But it is. While he's doing that, my question is, what is the difference between you and Albert Einstein or you and Oprah Winfrey? Real question. What's the difference? Some people say the money in your bank account, but what puts that there? So what do you think is the answer? What is the difference between you and Albert Einstein? Well, but I think we create our opportunities. It is how you think. And more than how you think, it's what you think. And that's what I want to share with you today. Because, you know, our greatest freedom is the fact that we... Give that guy a hand. I don't know what he did. I bet he was I don't believe it. It's not going... but that's way ahead. Okay. So the difference, is how you think and what you think. And so I want to talk a little bit about mental software. And the fact is that, you know, when I have patients or clients that say, you know, you would be upset too because if you had all the bad things that happened to me. The fact is, worry is a wish you don't want. Fear is negative goal setting. And if you're going to focus on the negative, the fact is all of life is an energy exchanging process. It's all about vibration. Even a geologist will say that stones and rocks have a vibration. And what we feel in our mind and our heart and what we think, because there have been experiments where with your mind, you can actually change the molecular structure of that glass of water. The fact is, how many of us often give the excuse of, it's in my DNA. If you can't lose weight, what do we say? Bad luck, it's in my DNA. Do you know that we now can change our DNA with our thoughts and our consciousness? How many of you know that? And if you don't know it, get Bruce Lipton, Dr. Bruce Lipton's book called The Biology of Belief. Because with our thoughts, we can change any reality, and that is a fact. So when we're looking at what your thoughts are, the fact is that you get to choose them, and that is really the power of your being, and I'm going through this very quickly, because obstacles are something that you see only when you take your eyes off the goal, right? You can only be positive or negative at one time. You can flip back and forth. But the fact is that conscious choice is where you're going to start intervening. And if you're going to focus on the obstacles, you are giving more energy to it. And where attention goes, energy flows. So there again, this is where you can intervene. So, and then when I talk about goal setting, you know, Tom, I've met every goal I've ever met. One of the problems with goal setting is that sometimes people don't set them high enough. I had a client that once said, I just want to make enough money to pay the bills. And guess what? She only made enough money in all her lifetime to pay the bills. Never to go on a cruise, never to go sailing with you guys, no money for the Rotary. Because she set her goals too low. Now, here's another question. How many of you have noticed that you have the same New Year's resolution year after year after year, right? You want to lose weight, maybe drink a little bit less, right? How many, would you raise your hand? Do you have recycled goals? Okay, if goal setting alone worked, why hasn't change happened? And the fact is that goal setting alone is not enough. Our goals are the seeds of the realities that we create. But as you know, having a seed company, if you don't fertilize it, it ain't gonna bloom. Is that not true? And so with goals, I'll tell you the problem is, goals are too abstract. If you want to make a difference in this world, you got to speak the language of the body. Your body doesn't get off on abstract thinking. You got to take it a step further, and we will be talking about that. Goals aren't bad. They're just not enough. So, and you know, sometimes we have to have a do-nothing list. How many of you have noticed that to get things done, rather than adding to your list, is it not taking something off the plate? How many of you noticed that? I wrote 7 books. One is a bestseller in China. They don't pay you. Have you noticed? Looks good on a resume, but try to collect. But sometimes to get things done, you got to look at what you got to take off your plate. And that was the best advice I got to get that little project done. So first we make our habits, and then our habits make us. We are what we repeatedly do. Now here is the issue. Habits go to the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind, this is fact, is 1,000,000 times more powerful. So what is happening in this world is that you might have the right goals, but you don't have the right power tools. Because if I told you to dig a hole, and I could give you a spoon, or a shovel, or a backhoe, what would you take? Backhoe is going to get it done a lot faster, more effectively, and efficiently, right? But most of you are digging your hole with a spoon, because the conscious mind is just an itty-bitty % of what gets things done. How many of you are in sales or were in sales? Weren't you taught that people decide by emotion and justify it with logic? And that is true. And emotion is generally hovering around in the subconscious mind. So my question, and that's why I do brain training, I do hypnosis. 85% of the people I see for smoking, I know, quit one time. It's one and done, because it's a power tool that goes down to where the problem lies. It's like an electrician going in and rewiring. A lot of you have heard of neuroscience, neuroplasticity. What we have to do is create new neural pathways. I do it for golf, your kids' gymnastics, worry, depression, alcohol, you name it. If you want to change a behavior and it has any repetition where it goes into habitual level, this is the way to go. And it does work. For 50 years I've found that it's the power tool. So here's an example. Yeah, it's all of the real estate below that's really controlling your destiny. Only unless you intervene with conscious choice. I choose, therefore I am free. The words of J.L. Moreno, the father of psychodrama. And that says it all. So when we get stuck, it's usually because of limiting beliefs. So where do limiting beliefs come from? Sometimes parents have said, you'll never amount to anything. It reminds me of a patient I had back in Green Bay, Wisconsin. And the girl said, she's a woman then, I remember going past the reformatory, and my parents saying to my little brother, someday you're going to live there. He lived there. He was scripted. What script do you need to let go of? What stories have you bought into and they're not yours? I think of a guy back in Green Bay. He was a lawyer. He hated it. He was a musician. That's what made his heart sing. But his parents, remember how many of us grew up back then? You had to be a doctor or a lawyer. I don't know if anybody's old enough, but that was kind of like what you should do. So whose story are you buying into? And remember, when we have limiting beliefs, it's not only what people say, but it's often what's not said. It's often what's not said. And even more so, it's your perception. You could have been a younger sister or brother, and you looked up to your older brother. He was 5 years older. He could ride a bike, and you were just trying to struggle at walking. And that can create a sense of not being enough. The biggest thing I hear from my clients, whether it's coaching or therapy, is that they don't feel they were enough, either to please their parents or what their own goals may have been. So again, it's perceptions, and perceptions are, so the bottom line is, we don't see things as they are, we see things as we are. And we project that energy out into the universe, and literally, and this is factual now with neuroscience, it matches up and brings to you exactly what your mind state might be. So if you have a victim mentality, you're going to be victimized again and again and again. And I've worked with rape patients, and what I've known with the increase in rape, it's not always so much more that more people are raped, but the same women are raped over and over again because they have a neon light. And so whether it's not having the money you want in your bank account or whatever is keeping you stuck, you got to delete it and create your own script. So basically, it's about reclaiming your power. And I want you to be aware how much I have control over you with just my mind. And I was looking for a man who was not frail. And so I decided, and so I saw Sean, and I said, would you be willing to participate? So would you give him a hand. Give that guy a hand. Yeah. Okay, and I don't know if anybody had seen an occupational therapist. How many of you are familiar with muscle testing? Yeah, okay. So we're going to do a little muscle testing. I want you to put your arm up. I was in a car accident a few years ago, so I'm a little bit weak on this one. But we're going to just do a test drive here. You're going to push up. I'm going to push down. Fair enough? Okay, push up. It's hurt. Oh, wow. Could I have another volunteer? This one might be more challenging than I want. Okay, give me 3 to 5 seconds, Sean. Okay. Can you put the same arm up? And you're going to push up, and I'm going to push down. Resist as hard as you can. Oh, my God. Okay, but he's not as good. And for a big guy. Now, I want to tell you, I also did this with Mark Carrier. He's with the Panthers. He is in professional development. I think he just about fell over. And actually, you're much better. Mark Carrier, an ex-Panther player. I'm 78 years old. And his arm just went to his side. I knew that was a way that he wouldn't forget me because I think the Panthers need my brain training. How many of them? They need something, right? Okay, so he still had some resistance, but yeah, he wasn't up there. Okay, now give me 5 more 3 seconds are enough. Okay, let me just think. Okay, put it up again, resist as hard as you can. You push up, I'm gonna push down, fair enough? And there's no way I could hang from it at this point. So with mind, that's why I said it's not always what's said. How many of you, where people say, I'm just fine, and you know they're hurting? It's what's not being said that you've got to pick up on. So would you all give Sean a hand? And one of the things I want to emphasize, this was my thought affecting him. Let me ask you this question. Are you aware of the impact of what your thoughts have on your psychology and your physiology? And then you wonder why your team at work isn't getting things done. I'm putting an online course together on toxic cultures, transforming them into caring communities. God knows the world needs it. So, moving right along, I always like to talk about Nick Wallenda. Do you guys remember Nick Wallenda? Any of the Wallendas? And Nick was in Puerto Rico, and he'd walk that wire over and over again. And are you aware? What's his son's name again? Wait, Nick is the son. Who's the grandfather? Isn't Nick the one that went over the volcano in the Grand Canyon? Is that Nick? Carl Walenda is the one that was in Puerto Rico. But do you know what's interesting? Did you guys watch him? He's going over the volcano. He's going over the Grand Canyon. And he's singing Amazing Grace. He is at peace. Talk about centeredness and not letting your circumstances define your reality. That was an internal choice. It is amazing. But his grandpa, Carl Walenda, was in Puerto Rico, and he fell to his death. And his wife said, I have never seen him like this. He was checking the wires again and again and again. So my question is, and if you can answer it, you let me know. Was this clairvoyance? Did he know he was going to fall to his death? Or did his mind state of worry and fear interfere with his performance? And the price he paid was his death. So, this is a little bit smaller than mine. I find it helps if I can look at this gated community, or look at this as a gated community. It is really how you look at it. How many of you have kids? How many of you have kids and wish you didn't? Again, let's just be honest. We'll see. So I want to tell you the reason I put this keynote together. I shared it because Yadkin Bank sponsored me when I spoke up in Statesville a few years ago. You guys, it was your team at Mitchell that was there. And I got to say, Yadkin came through for me. So I was doing well as a therapist. I was speaking all over the world. I made millions as a single parent. Nothing was given to me. I did well. And so I built this house in Holly Springs. It's near Raleigh. It's on Sunset Lake. Home and Garden Channel had it for 4 years. They called it a mansion. I think it's pretentious, but it was a nice house. And then things kind of changed. And I was speaking here. Actually, I was speaking here in Charlotte, and the women liked me, and they said, oh, look at Lake Norman. You got to know I had no intentions of ever leaving. This was my dream house. I mean, you don't know how much I paid for that chandelier. You know what? I could care less about chandeliers at this point. So anyway, I look at Lake Norman with no intentions of ever leaving. So I go into a KW office, and I said, look, I'm fun, but I'm not a buyer. And I know you guys aren't paid by the hour. And so he shows me this place on Kaiser Island. And I said, oh my God, this could work. I'm putting in an offer and I want to close by noon tomorrow. There were 3 offers the next day for land alone, 20 years ago. 100,000 more. I don't know if this is divine intervention or I'm supposed to be there, but there's a long story behind it we don't have. So I go from that to this. But I'm kind of happy. and honest to God, that whole house, my new house, would fit in the foyer. And so things are going along. But you know what? Your greatest strength can be your weakness. How many of you have noticed that? I have a strength of being empathic and trusting. I've been kicked around so many times, and that's how I lost every dime. I lost 4 to 5 million. And then more. I was calling every classmate who I knew had done well. Nobody wants to give you money when you need it. And I remember meeting 3 guys on Match in a bar one time. And some of them, honest to God, gave me $7,000 to $8,000. Didn't give it to me, it was a loan. $7,000 to $8,000. I don't even think I signed something. Isn't the universe, God, it's an interesting happening, isn't it? So we tear it down, and there's a big story behind that. We'll talk about that in the bar sometime. And so we tear it down to build. And, when I was buying this, I had a lot down at the beach. I bought 35 lots because I trusted someone who was going to sell 1 a week. That realtor just had gotten out of jail. He was a convicted felon. And you know what? He's now on Cooper's cabinet. And it's in the newspapers. I'll tell you who it is. It's Xander Guy. Maybe you know him. AD Guy or something. His dad was a senator. And it's called The Good Old Boys. And I walked right into it. And so anyway, one of the lots was going to sell. So I was going to make the down payment. My realtor forged my name and released it. I was going to make $300,000. It's gone. So now I got to pay for this, and I get a call from somebody whose parents I counseled 20 years ago. I don't even know what this guy looks like. He wanted help for his kid. Before I can help your kid, I need 75 grand by noon tomorrow. And he said, I just sold an apartment building in Milwaukee. I don't even know what this guy looks like, and he gave me 75 grand. I'm not even sure I signed a paper, but you know what? God provides. Somebody was out there looking for me. And so I went from that, what HGTV calls a mansion, I'm now living in this. Because I tore down the cottage. It was a modular, so it's no problem. I can live this way for 3 months. Nothing was hooked up. I lived for 15 months with no running water, no flushing toilets, no wired-in electricity. I didn't have that whole, it's an old FEMA camper, cigarette, stale smell, rusty. It was $3 grand, not a Cadillac, okay? And I didn't have, this was all storage back here, you know what I mean? Yeah, this was storage. I had this little 5 foot there with a bed that I would flop into. And I had an electric frying pan that I could hook up to a post outside, warm a little water. I'd swim in the lake every day for about 10 months of the year so I could have a bath. I would show up for gigs like this, and you would think I was worth $1 million. And I was homeless. And this went on for 15 months because what happened next, have you ever noticed that banks only give you money when you have it? Have you noticed that when you need money, they don't want to deal with you? You guys are realtors, you know what that's like. And so now I go to Craigslist. Oh my God, Craigslist is the answer for everything, right? And there's a guy that's a broker there, and he's going to put a few $100,000 in my builder's bank account the next day, and it never showed up. I got scammed once again. And so it's hanging there, and he said, I ain't doing anything with this. And I'm like, okay. So he had to get the crane back. He put it on the foundation, and for 15 months, I had to come up with an answer of how to get this sold. I will tell you, I am creative, and I am resourceful, and I never, ever, ever quit. Guess how I sold it? I mean, guess how I bought it? They ain't never going to get sold, I'll tell you that. I got grandkids waiting for me to die, right, Gene? I'm serious, they are. Like, how long is that chick going to live? You know. How do you think I bought a house on Lake Norman, and I'm told I have one of the best spots? Guess how I bought it? Guess. Oh, you're not going to get a demotion. Just guess. Gene's husband is my son. He had a friend with a perfect credit score. I made him the CFO of my LLC. And within 24 hours, we got 24 different credit cards. I bought a house that I've now been offered $2 million for. I bought it on credit cards. Don't tell me that's not ingenious. I would think that deserves a little bit of a hand. Let's have it, come on. So anyway, if you're going through hell, gang, keep going. Never give up, as Winston Churchill said. Never give in, never quit. And there's always a tomorrow. And that's the view you guys get every day. And so, not as elegant, but it's practical as heck. Because you know what got me out of the deep water? And I'm above again. I am unstoppable. And so are you, if you have that mindset. And if you have that belief system. But from the back, it's a little bigger. On the top, there's a 2-bedroom rental. It's called Airbnb. Over there, we have your friend right there. And this is where Glenda and Stan are, who are our guests today. And so now you know the rest of the story. So I want this to empower you to know how you can make a difference and how you can make things happen. And you know what I found out? You know, we have a different dream, don't we? I could care less about the chandelier. I really could. I look at this. But you know what's interesting? In those 15 months, one of my friends, some of you might know Babette Haddix, she's like, oh, you're such an inspiration. How could you do this? And you know what? It was okay. I actually don't remember being that. It was an inconvenience. I mean, to take a bath in a little Rubbermaid tub with, whatever. And the girls, she has some daughters, they would come over. The Dollar Tree has pails. That was their commode. And we would find a porta potty. And we would do a little, remember that? We would do a little run. Well, I didn't give you one, you used the tree. And so we would just, but where there's a will, there's a way. And you know what? I never had any doubt, never. There was no option. I wanted this. And I remember my other son, not your husband, but the other one, said, Mom, you just have to admit, you screwed up, you lost everything, you can't have what you want. And I just said, if there's ever a will, you ain't gonna be in it, honey, because you are not gonna be in it. But I want to tell you a couple other stories. I wrote a book, Winning, and there's some people that were unstoppable as well. Bonnie St. John, African-American, California. You might notice she only has one leg, not the typical skier. But somebody said, hey, Bonnie, you wanna go skiing? And you know what? Sometimes we need permission. Sometimes you got to invite that person who would die with the music in them unless you ask the right questions. Is this not true? And Bonnie is skiing at the Olympics, the Paralympics. And she skied the fastest, but she didn't get the gold. Why? You know why she didn't get the gold? Because she didn't get back up fast enough. So when we talk about being unstoppable, when we talk about being resilient and bouncing back, what do you need to let go of? I don't care if it's a bad divorce, a financial setback, or whatever. My question to you right now, what do you need to let go of that could be keeping you stuck? What do you need to do to create a new story and make it your story? And so there was Bonnie, and I want to share a couple other ones. How many of you remember Eric Weinmeier, the guy that wrote, remember he climbed Mount Everest? He was blind. And people said, Eric, why did you climb Mount Everest? You get to the top, you can't see the view anyhow. And Eric said, you know what? I didn't climb Mount Everest for the view. It is the process of overcoming and becoming more than you ever thought you could be. That is what life is about. And I know there are parents in here that are helicopter parents, and shame on you. Because in my book, Winning, you know what I learned about people who go above and beyond? They had struggle in their life. They overcame it. Giving your kid a trophy when they don't earn it doesn't do it. Even patting them on the back, good, doesn't hurt. You know what gives your kid confidence? It's putting them in situations where they are challenged so that they believe in themselves. They don't need you. You're going to die someday. It's always having the value of struggle and challenge. So, people wonder whether the glass is half full or empty. They miss the point. It's refillable. And I just got an article from Richard Branson this morning. And do you know he was a dropout? And he was just talking in the article that, he was a horrible student, but his mother never put him down. Because he was creative. He was a conflict. He didn't know the difference between net profit and this profit or whatever, but he's got money to show in his bank account. So if you build character and resilience and you encourage problem-solving skills, I'm going to tell you, you'll make the difference, because you got to go with the flow. You can't stop the waves, but you can learn to surf. You don't have a choice. The Ukraine situation, COVID, you don't have a choice about what happens, but you do have a choice in how you choose to react with it and deal with it. So one of the last things is I want to share with you is everything comes down to visualization, mental imagery, putting your mind to work, not the spoon to work, put the backhoe to work. And this is what works. I have canceled 3 surgeries with this. And I started speaking all over the world when I visualized. And I visualized having that house on Lake Norman. What the mind sees, the body believes, and this is the process. You get into a relaxed body-mind state, because when you're in alpha, your mind is like a sponge. It's more open and receptive. You bombard the sensorium. You not only see it, feel it, touch it, hear it, smell it. You got to feel it. You associate a charge of passion and good feelings with the image of what you desire. And I promise you, once the pictures in your mind are crystallized, you cannot not make it happen. I promise that. I promise. Number 3 is you got to be positive. You got to look at what you don't want. If you keep saying, I don't want to smoke a cigarette, your subconscious mind doesn't separate the do's from the do nots. All it hears is cigarette, cigarette, cigarette. If you say, I'm not going to eat donuts, your mind is saying donuts, donuts, and you eat it. So you've got to do it in the positive, and you got to see it as though it has already happened. If you see it in the future, you will die before it happens. So always see it as though the miracle has already taken place, and then know that you deserve it. If you have a block, if you're stuck, you won't be open to the change. You will resist it. The subconscious mind, and we didn't have time for a little exercise, the subconscious mind will block it, because remember, it's more powerful. And so I want to tell you a little story about, and if you're not from Green Bay, how many of you have ever heard of Donald Driver? And you're going to have to hit the speakers. How many of you have heard of Donald Driver? Oh, really? Oh, we got some NFL fans here. Let me just share the story of Donald Driver. He was homeless in Houston, you know? He would live in rental trucks that they forgot to lock. And, you know, the unfortunate thing is, if you could bring the volume up a little, he sold drugs. He didn't take them, but he sold them to feed his sister and his mother. Sometimes you have to make a choice between, it's a hard choice. And one day, he was in a stolen car, and he was driving a little rapidly down the road. When you have a stolen car, you're not leisurely about it. And a little old lady backed out of her driveway, and he hit her. And when you're in a stolen car, you don't stop to say, hey, Sean, how are you? And he kept driving. But you know what? Donald Driver had a conscience. Deep down, he was a good person. And he went back, and he said, are you all right? And this total stranger said, I want to have a front porch talk with you. And sat down with Donald and said, Sonny, I don't know who you are, but I know you could be doing so much more with your life. And Donald always had a vision of catching passes from Brett Favre. What the mind sees, the body believes. And here you see a picture of Donald Driver catching passes from Brett Favre. So what is your vision? What is your story? Begin it now. And thank you for having me with you. It's been a joy. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Edie.